and welcome. I am to learn histology today. The integumentary system, or developmental anatomy of the integumentary system. And after we've done that, we're gonna do shoulder impingement training. And if you participate in the shoulder impingement training, then it's very honest. And we're talking about inner anatomy, pregnancy, and I don't know. So what is in here? As part of the early development of a fertilized egg, a portion of the developing embryo differentiates into 3 layers of tissue called primary germ layers. Yes, you do it again. So as part of the early development of a fertilized egg, a portion of a developing embryo differentiates into 3 layers of tissue called primary germ layers. So there was somewhere in the early development of a human being, there's the primary germ layers, 3 of them. On the basis of position, the 3 primary germ layers are referred to as ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay, somewhere at the beginning of the early development of a fertilized egg, there is something and somewhere, and outside is the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. They are the embryonic tissue from which all tissues and organs of the body will develop. Okay, that is the embryonic tissue, the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, somewhere at the fertilized egg in the early development, and from that the organs of the tissues and organs of a body will develop. The epidermis is derived from the ectoderm. Ecto was on the outside. Okay, the epidermis is from the ectoderm. At the beginning of the 8th week after fertilization, the ectoderm consists of simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay. Somewhere at the fertilized egg there is the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And out of the ectoderm at the outside becomes the epidermis. And after 8 weeks, in this ectoderm, out of which the epidermis comes, there are simple cuboidal epithelium, something. And these cells become flattened and are known as the periderm. So whatever. So in the beginning of the fertilized egg, in the ectoderm at the outside, there are these cuboid epithelium cells, and they get then flat, and that are also part of developing out of this ectoderm, which has this cuboid epithelium, these cuboid epithelium cells, and then they get them flat, the epidermis. And this whole thing is called the periderm. No, these cells, when they're flattened, are known as periderm. By the 4th month, all layers of the epidermis are formed, and each layer assumes its characteristic structure. Okay, these flat cells are called periderm. They have a previous cuboid epithelium. But what were they? After fertilization, the ectoderm consists of simple cuboid epithelium. The ectoderm itself consists out of this cuboid epithelium, which when flattened and then known as periderm, out of which when by the 4th month has formed the epidermis. Now we have it. I'm not sure if I can repeat it. Now the ectoderm is on the outside, and out of that, in that there are these cuboid epithelium cells after 8 weeks, and they're forming then to the periderm, they get flat, these cuboid epithelium cells in the ectoderm, and they're making then the epidermis. In the 4th month, they are, the periderm. So we're having ectoderm. Inside of the ectoderm are the cuboidal epithelium cells, which are becoming flattened, and then known as periderm. And they're guessing that the 4 months we have the epidermis. The dermis is derived from what have we been talking about? Development anatomy of the integumentary system. Are we talking about the skin? No, the dermis is derived from mesodermal cells in a zone called the ectoderm. Did I say that the whole time around? It was the ectoderm. Ectoderm is the outside. From the ectoderm comes the epidermis, and the dermis comes from mesodermal cells beneath the ectoderm. So probably the mesoderm. Mesodermal cells. Okay, and then we're having the mesoderm, in which are the mesodermal cells, and that makes the dermis. They undergo a process that changes them into the connective tissue that begins to form the dermis at about 11 weeks. Okay, they're having a process going which changes them into connective tissue. And at the 11th week, it starts to become the dermis. Okay, in the middle layer, in the mesoderm, we're having the mesodermal cells, and they are starting a process, making them the connective tissue. From the 11th week onwards, they start to become the dermis. Nails are developed at about 10 weeks. Initially, they consist of a thick layer of epithelium called the primary nail field. Initially, they consist of a thick layer of epithelium. Cuboid epithelium? Okay, just epithelium. And they are called the primary nail field. 10th week, okay. The nail itself is keratinized epithelium and grows distally from its base. It is not until the 9th month that the nails actually reach the tips of the digits. Okay, there is the primary nail field. That is, we don't know where it is. But there is the primary nail field. It consists of epithelium cells. From the 10th week on, they are starting to be some type of nails. There starts the development. And then around, during the whole pregnancy until the 9th month, then these nails are growing distal as keratinized epithelium. Hair follicles develop between the 9th and 12th weeks as downgrowths of a stratum basal of the epidermis into the deeper dermis. Somewhere is something, the stratum basal, maybe this is a layer of the epidermis that grows down into the dermis, and that forms then the hair follicle, 11th or 12th week. The downgrowth soon differentiate into the bulb and the papilla of the hair. Okay, whatever, it grows down and it settles properly down. It makes a bit in architecture, and it becomes the bulb and papilla of the hair. Beginning of the epithelial portions of sebaceous glands and the other structures associated with hair follicles. So, and then also the beginning of the epithelial portions of the sebaceous glands, whatever, some sebaceous glands starting also to grow there, and other structures also which are having part of the hair follicles starting to grow. By the 5th and 6th month, the follicles produce lanugo, delicate fetal hair. It's again delicate. I get it now. We're saying them delicate muscle tissue, delicate fetal hair. It's just getting through it, and have said if we're delicate, if it's very much in the beginning and very delicate or whatever. If one understands it, it makes sense. By the 5th or 6th month, the follicles produce lanugo, and that is the beginning of hair. First on the head and then on other parts of the body. The lanugo is usually shed prior to birth. The epithelial secretory portions of sebaceous glands, they had grown there deep when the stratum basal of the epidermis had grown down into the dermis, in the 11th or 10th week. The epithelial secretory portions of the sebaceous glands develop from the sides of the hair follicles at about 16 weeks and remain connected to the follicles. So there are somewhere these epithelial secretory portions, and they're developing from the sides of the hair follicle at about 16 weeks, and they remain connected to the follicles. Let's go on. The epithelial portions of sudoriferous glands are also derived from downgrowths of a stratum. So the epithelial portions of a sudoriferous glands are also derived from downgrowth of stratum basal of the epidermis and epidermis. Sudoriferous glands, they grow down, and they appeared at about 20 weeks on the palm and sole a specific type of glands at the palm and soles, because palm and soles there's basically nothing which is somewhere else. And now there's something in particular there. Okay, we have the sudorypherous glands, and we're going down there, we have 20 peaks. Aber wenn wir at palm and soles and a little later in upper regions, the connective tissue and blood vessels associated with the glands develop from the mesoderm. Okay, there's some connective tissue and blood vessels. They come from the mesoderm in the middle. We heard nothing about the endoderm. Whatever, that was the anatomy of the developmental anatomy of the integumentary system. What is the integumentary system? Having heard a bit about the development. Now, we will continue at some point. We're having 4 minutes left for our short infringement training. That means if you were here for histology, you can go directly to the next part of histology. If you stay and participate in the short infringement training, then it's the honest. We're doing having a good and stable stance, and we're doing short circuits. We're going big. And again, back. And backwards. And now to the next exercise. We're having long arms, strong fists, and we're going as far back as we can on the shoulders. Front. Back. And backwards. Up. Back. Front. And now. Go lift up. Long arms, strong fists. Down over the shoulders. Get over the shoulders. Then the arms to the inside. Shoulders down. Together. Arms to the inside. Arms to the outside. Shoulders down. Together. Arms to the inside. Shoulders down. Hands to the outside. Shoulders down. Together. And release. Let's go to the next exercise. What is the next exercise? We're having, I didn't know it. We're lifting the arms up, whatever we're doing. Having the arms at the side, we're going in front. Having the arms at the front, shoulders down, and together. Arms big, shoulders up. Arms in front, shoulders down, together. Change. Arms back, shoulders up. And release. And now we shock, lift the arms up. Shrug the shoulders up. And release or down. If this or any other exercise causes pain, then don't do it. Arms up. Shoulders up. And the last time. Arms up. Shoulders up. And go down. And now we will pretzel curl. Also go down and to the outside. And on with the next exercise, the sandbag. I have a sock, you can do something else, or whatever. Have the long arm at the outside, let it fall down and catch it again. If you bring the hand into flexion, it's maybe easier to keep the arms straight, because that is a short exercise. Not really actual hand or whatever exercise. And stretching. One arm in the front. The arm back, down, pull the arm in, flat fingers, try to relax the arm. Let's make it a bit easier today, just pull the arm. And the arm in front. This was a short and vision training. I thank you very much, and until next time.